I'm just looking across the ring at this guy, and I'm just like, fuck, man, I was like 9 months ago, you're just sitting in a jail cell. And now you're sitting here looking across this dude at the cage. Like, how'd we get here? Like, I was like, I can't believe I'm actually doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I was almost kind of in daze for like the first minute of the round, moving around.
Welcome to the Mark of Men. Through conversations about highs, lows, and everything in between, you'll learn about each guest, but more than anything, you'll learn a little bit about yourself or the men in your life. Today's marksman is Jerome the Bull Klumb, a professional MMA fighter, strength and conditioning coach for fighters, and a personal trainer. Today we take a look at the man behind the warrior, his motivations within the cage, and a powerful story of finding forgiveness for himself and his father. Thank you for listening to the show. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. I am Michael Marks, and this is my mark on the world of men. All right, man. It's good to see you, Jay.
Good to see you too, Mike.
Yeah, man. Welcome to the show, brother. I've been looking forward to talking to you for a minute.
Me too, man. Me too. I've been looking to get on here with you for a while now.
Yeah, we're gonna keep doing these too. There's just so many conversations to have about so many things. But I figured I'd kick us off with just some like little questions just to kind of see, where you're at. One of the things I was curious about, because your presentation is that of like the stoic, thoughtful, spiritual warrior. What books are you reading at the moment?
One that I just finished. I'm actually in between books, but one I just read, it was a breakdown of one of my favorite psychologists is Carl Jung,
Mm-hmm.
but his writings are very difficult to kind of decipher. So other psychologists have paired up to help kind of break down his work, and this one is called the King, the Warrior, the Magician, and the Lover, and it talks about the four different psyches within the masculine energy of all men, and it breaks down. So there's a light side and a shadow side to every psyche. So like there's a good king and a bad king. There's the good warrior and the bad warrior. So it really helped with myself of understanding my mind,
Mm-hmm.
and where I was at. Because like as you read through the book, you can be like, all right, I can see these qualities in myself, or I can see where I was in this mindset or this psyche in my life. Like for me coming up younger, I was angry youth, so you can see where like the one is called like one of, I think, the shadow side of, it's either the king, I think it's a king, it's called like I forget the first part of the word, but it's something about like child mindset where like you lash out and like your temperament and stuff, and you're like, all right, I see where I was stuck in this when I was like a teenager. I was very volatile, lashed out, the tantrums and stuff like that. And then like going into the warrior, like that was one that really stood out to me the most, because it talked about having discernment as being a warrior, doing the things that, where courage comes in, being scared, but doing them anyway, doing the things that you have to in life, and having discernment and detachment from fearing the struggle or the pain that comes with it. But that on the shadow side of it can cause us to be very cold
Mm-hmm.
and to not understand other people's struggle, because, in my mindset, like I just do what I have to. I don't care about
Mm-hmm.
the pain or the difficulty of what's in front of me. But you have to have patience with other people,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where you can become very, to see things in black and white, and when you're in that mindset, but you have to still be able to have compassion. And then
Yeah.
that's where the magician and the lover psyche come into it, that keeps us rooted and connected to others.
So you've been leveraging that to kind of balance yourself out.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Did you now? Because like, I became aware of Carl Jung because of my exposure to Jordan Peterson. How did
Mm.
you get exposed to Jung?
It was actually a Tool song.
Oh, really?
That, yes, the song 46 and 2.
Okay.
And in the line, or like the opening part, it says, I'm picking through my scabs again. I'm picking through the old muscle. And he talks about I want stepping through my shadow,
Mm-hmm.
and in Carl Jung's theory, stepping through your shadow is in in terms like full enlightenment. You
Mm-hmm.
change the things about yourself that you can, and you accept the things that you can't. Because the more insecure, the more things within ourselves that we don't face and we don't heal, the bigger our shadow is.
Mm-hmm.
And then our shadow is also can be called our subconscious. And 80% of our behavior is subconscious.
Right.
So if the more we ignore of our shadow, the more our subconscious controls us. The more that we face our shadow, the more conscious we become as beings.
Which is interesting because that running from our shadow is one of the reasons why it makes it difficult to connect, right? The using diving into that and how the warrior, the king, the magician, the lover, when you look at the state of men today, what do you see?
Uh, I see a lot of men like myself through the bigger part, like not having true guidance from good male role models.
Mm-hmm.
Like my father was a part of my life, but my parents had me at very young, and my dad had his own sense of traumas and stuff that he was still going through, and in their time of their life, they didn't have the education and the knowing of what that was. So he couldn't teach me how to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to figure stuff out on my own. And then there's so much in our culture, movies, music artists, uh, athletes and stuff that you look and you're like, oh, this is what being a man is.
Yeah.
How this guy carries himself, or you try to find these things, but it's not always right. And especially in today's world, there's a lot of anger.
Mm-hmm.
So I see a lot of angry men out there that lash out, or because they think that's what makes them strong.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't show weakness, right, I always have to be tough. And it was something that I bought into for a long time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I see is like vulnerability in today's world seems like weakness.
Okay.
And that's something that I try to promote otherwise through my page and through myself, because as fighters, we're all kind of looked at as tough guys, but we still have emotions. We still go through stuff. We still have mothers and girlfriends that love us and people that we show love to. We're not, the people that you see that go out into the cage all the time and compete. That's a separate entity of ourselves.
Right. That when we were upstairs and we were talking about it, and actually just mentioned it now as well. For the warrior to be internal, to not really think about others, but the fear, all the emotions and all the things that you guys go through. The times I've competed, it's really hard to think about everyone else because you're preparing yourself. Because the one of the things I always considered, like especially competition, is it's not that often in life that you're just marching towards the truth. We
Mm-hmm.
can have a conversation. We could speculate about life and things and truths that we believe to be there. But one thing about a fight is the outcome. The outcome, the truth lives right there.
Mm-hmm.
And to walk right towards it, it's a supremely stressful experience.
Mm-hmm.
And to lose the ability to empathize with others because you're on this, you're walking that path, but the power that comes with being more rounded out and being able to see the other side is powerful. It's interesting that you chose to. Who's the author of that book?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I can send that over to you.
Please do, because I'd like to read it, and I'll put the link.
And it's a short read too. The book's, I think, maybe like 150 pages, maybe.
Oh, cool. So
Yeah,
it's a big
yeah,
breakdown. Okay,
yeah.
that's awesome. The Yeah, that's it. The men being angry, this that state, and not knowing how to deal with that vulnerability, because you see the divorce rates, and God, I do feel my parents got divorced when I was 4, but one thing I was never lacking for was a masculine influence.
Mm.
But I have seen, guys I know, even bits and pieces of my life. It's like you're kind of like building a figure that It's like, some dudes like Michael Jordan, that's the guy, and then I'll take a little bit of this guy, and then like James Bond, and they'll mash up this dude they'd like to be, but there's
Mm.
no like real world example for who that dude really is.
Yeah.
You know, how long have you been fighting MMA?
Been fighting. So I started training officially because I wrestled since I was a kid. And then I started training when I was about 23. And then I took my first kickboxing fight 9 months later. So about close to 24. So I'm 32. So about 8 years I've been fighting.
Okay, okay. And how has your thoughts about fighting changed since you started to now?
Um, at first it was like what really drew me into it is just I grew up watching hoists and stuff in the UFC originally, and you see they look bigger than life, like all these big fighting supers, and you know the that's what kind of gets draws you to it. I wanted what kind of started fighting. Everybody wants to know who the toughest guy in the yard is.
Yeah.
So like to see that and be like, I can be that guy. That's what really drawn me to it. And I guess all the fame and the money, the stuff that comes to it from like my younger days, to where it's eventually just grown into fighting. For me is very spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
because of, like you were saying about competition, and you're going towards that truth. Because no matter what we say to all our friends before a fight, whatever, the hype, the build up and stuff can be like, what's going through your head, what emotions that you're facing in that moment, and learning how to control those emotions, right? And that's, for me, the more that I've learned to control my emotions in a fight, which is about the most extreme thing you can do in life, the calmer and not as loud and hectic my normal life has become.
Mm-hmm.
So like it's been it's a growth. After every fight, I not only become a better fighter, win or loss, but I become a better person. I become a better brother, become a better, son, a friend.
Mm-hmm.
It's yeah, it's about that growth for me, because every time I chip a little more away at myself, and I learn more about myself in those moments. When the pressure's on, you get rocked.
Yeah.
And that panic comes over. You're like, well, I really can't see him. I'm discombobulated. I'm hurt. I know he's about to put it on me. And then, or you get to that point in a fight or a match and you're absolutely gassed, and you're like, there's no way that I can push through. That voice in your head is just like, you're done. You're exhausted. Your legs are sapped. And you find something within yourself to be able to push.
Mm-hmm.
And you make it through, whether you win or lose. Just the fact that you were able to find that in yourself and push through when you wanted to quit, that does level for your confidence and for your just overall belief in yourself, and knowing what you're going to do when things get really difficult. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to truly learn to show good qualities about yourself when things are good.
Yeah.
It's what qualities come out when I'm struggling, when I'm absolutely panicked, when things aren't going my way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, translates into life.
It's interesting, the whole process of watching like a fighter mature, and then also being in the gym and training and watching. There's guys that have come through our gym that everybody, you look at them and you're like, oh my god, and then you get your hands on them and you see them wilt because it doesn't go their way.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see guys that you're like, okay, there's nothing here, and you can't find the quit in them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because you do learn a lot about yourself, and you learn a lot about other people when you train. Do you feel like martial arts has made you, you alluded to it already, but martial arts has rounded you out and made you a better person, in your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, martial arts saved my life.
Mm-hmm.
Because before that, like before I started training, I did a year and a half in jail, DUIs, assaults, and I always watched martial arts as a kid, but I live in a small town, so I didn't have a lot of the opportunities. We had wrestling, and then after that, there really wasn't too much in my area. But by the time I got out, there was a small school there that I had heard about, and literally it was probably the week after I got out of jail, I was like, I'm gonna go train, and yeah, just lost my train of thought. Uh, Yeah, where was I going with that? Yep, I lost
That's all good. I mean,
it.
so you got out of jail and you just immediately went to go train.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you had already been thinking about it because following Hoist, we were children when that happened. What during your time in jail, what made the trigger to actually step in that gym and actually get?
Um, because like my mindset going into it was like when I went into jail anyway, it was like I saw the errors in my ways and I was like, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna take every program, I'm gonna dump myself in everything that can be able to fix myself. And being in there like worked out all the time. I mean, it's jail. And then started training a lot of the guys on the block. That's how I eventually ended up finding my love for personal training.
Okay.
Was I ended up being kind of the personal trainer of the block I was on. But I really started to think like what like something that I've done for myself over the years is when I get into like ruts or I start to feel like I'm at a place, I go back and like what were the things that I was doing when I was at the happy points in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I always went back to high school, like the happiest part of my life, or when I did the best in school, or wasn't getting in trouble and stuff as a kid was wrestling season. I was completely focused. I was that was it
Mm-hmm.
for that winter season, and so I was like, I want to do this, and I was like, I at least want to take one fight and see if this is really what I want to do. And then after, like I said, I took my first fight 9 months after I started training. I got a third round TKO, and then I was hooked.
Yeah. I, that's, that's like, all right, I'm training now. Like, get out of jail, start training, take a fight, knock a dude out. That's a good day. That's
Yeah,
that's a good like start to a
yeah,
new
and that was
direction.
such a surreal moment for me too, because like I was sitting there, and like I had been in street fights, so that all that's so like impulsive. Like you
Mm-hmm.
don't have a whole lot of time to think. So like you're sitting there, we do like the walkouts. My opponent was out first, and I came out second, and you're just sitting there. And then that was the first time I realized like you don't see the crowd because when all the spotlights are on the center, so it's just like darkness. You hear people saying stuff and whatnot, but I'm just looking across the ring at this guy, and I'm just like, fuck, man. I was like 9 months ago, you're just sitting in a jail cell, and now you're sitting here looking across this dude at the cage. Like, how'd we get here? Like, I was like, I can't believe I'm actually doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like I was almost kind of in daze for like the first minute of the round, moving around. He's throwing stuff at me, like it was there, but I wasn't throwing anything back. I was just kind of like, what do I do? Like, and then I got hit with I remember I got hit with a cross, and then he kicked me in the leg, but his foot wrapped around it. It hit my glute. I remember it hurt so bad, and then I got like, okay, you know what to do now. And I got mad. I was like, all right, now we're gonna fight. And then I started opening up. But yeah, it was such a surreal and crazy moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like just being there, just looking across, and I'm just like, wow, 9 months ago I was just sitting in jail, and now here I am.
Yeah. So when you won that fight, walk me through the emotions of leading up to the finish, when you realized you had finished him, and then the celebration in the cage afterwards. How was that for you?
Uh, like when I got the finish, because like the guy, I started fighting at a heavier weight, and back with amateur kickboxing, like it was real loose with like weight and
Uh,
protocol and athletic commissions back then. So my teammate was fighting on that same card, and he was overweight, and I was just on. So we ended up riding down the whole time with the heat in the car so that he could keep cutting weight. I
okay.
ended up coming in like 3 pounds underweight, and my opponent came in like 6 pounds over. So it ended up being like a 10-pound weight advantage. And the guy was really durable. And so I didn't think I was going to get the finish. And then it was crazy. We were in an exchange, and out of nowhere, because you only like remember like bits and pieces of what you hear from like your corner and stuff while you're in there. I just remember my coach screaming uppercut hook, and I threw this uppercut. I popped his chin up, and I hit him with a hook, like, and it felt like it was in a movie. And but I didn't think about it. It was just like my coach just took the controller for a second. I was like, boom, boom, and the guy just dropped in front of me, and I stood over him for a second when my coach and the ref were like, get to the neutral corner. And I was kind of just in shock that he just fell the way he did. And then I like go hurry up and run over to the corner. And then like it was just euphoric after that. I was just like, I loved the feeling, the hearing the crowd, the everything. I'm like, I want this. And I was instantly addicted to that, to the glory,
Yeah.
and I've been chasing it ever since.
That's awesome. That's awesome. The So you've been fighting, but you are like, and even in the gym. I mean, everybody sees you because you train some of the guys that train at our gym, but you also train other people, and you were training dudes in jail as well. So was training your initial path that you were taking.
Yeah, because so like that was something else that outside of going to the gym that I did as well. As soon as I got out, I enrolled through ISSA to become a personal trainer, and I got certified and stuff. But once again, the area that I was in was very small town. I mean, Lock Haven is the last time I checked anyway, it was the second poorest town in the whole state.
Okay, and Lock Haven's where?
Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And so like building any type of clientele was very difficult. So I stopped training people for a while and just used the knowledge for myself until coming out here to ATT. And it was a team meeting that we actually had, how I ended up really getting my foot in the door with training people and being one of the strength and conditioning coaches at the gym, because they were talking about how some of the pro fighters need to be doing a strength and conditioning program, but they know how expensive strength and conditioning coaches are. And then this voice went off in my head. It's like, this is your opportunity to say something, because you have the knowledge and the skills to be able to help these guys. And just starting off, I can give them more affordable prices than a more established strength and conditioning coach at this time. So I raised my hand. I was like, hey, technically I'm a certified personal trainer. I was like, these guys that can't afford more expensive guys, I can start to get them helped out. And from there, I picked up, Gary.
Yeah.
Gary was one of my first clients. First and longest clients. And then people started seeing, because with anything with training, there's so many gimmicks or trainers out there that don't really know what they're doing. So, once people start seeing you getting results from somebody else, that's when you start. And, Gary looks night and day compared to what he's been super consistent. He's been putting into work, came in with some prior injuries and some upper back issues and stuff. And for the most part, we've been able to work through a lot of them.
That's awesome.
And that's really branched off from there. And I've noticed since then, I've been getting more interest from like the actual students instead of like outside people.
Right. Because, I see you, and you train women, you train men, you train the fighters, you train regular people. What are two of the things that you notice many people that come in needing personal training, what are they usually missing?
Consistency.
Okay.
And like most people have a general idea on what exercise is, but it's how to formulate a proper program and to be able to track the results. Because for most people, like, and because there's so many influencers and stuff out there nowadays, and they see all these people doing these crazy complicated workouts or these, really intricate programs where they're breaking down muscle groups and really isolating muscle groups for muscle growth. But a lot of those are for high level athletes or people that have been bodybuilding for years, and they're really focusing on just muscle development, right? Because lifting and exercising for functional strength is different than lifting to build muscle, right? That's why you don't always see bodybuilders throwing around the heaviest amount of weight, because it's about fine-tuning muscle, compared to like strength guys, it's, lower weight or higher weight, lower reps, so, but for like everyday fitness people, it's, you don't have to be doing all this crazy stuff. For lifting, in the most part, it's very mundane and boring. That's why it can be hard for people to find the motivation to keep doing it, because you're going to be doing the same lifts week in, week out, week in, week out. It's very similar to martial arts. is, that's where you're really going to be able to see your progress and build the muscle groups and strength that you want, is the consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to at least 3 days a week for your average person, 3 days a week of doing strength training, and then piecing in some cardio on those other days is perfect to be in good general health.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to be more than that, that's something different. But
Mm-hmm.
most people just want to be generally healthy, and it's not. It can be relatively simple.
Okay. We haven't talked since we sat in ceremony,
Mm-hmm.
and the ceremony we had, um, I know because I've had I've spent so much of the past few years like focused on myself,
Mm-hmm.
and like you had mentioned with the book, oftentimes I'd find myself just looking at things from my perspective, and then struggling even to maintain connection with my now wife. Um, how was, and by ceremony we're talking about ayahuasca. How did that ceremony go for you?
That ceremony was the most powerful experience of my life. I've I've been looking into spirituality and self growth and going through and dealing with my childhood trauma of abuse for a long time, and I've gone to therapy. I've done group counseling, especially as a kid, because I had a lot of anger management and stuff growing up. And at one point, I was really into Christianity, and I ended up falling away from that. And for a while, like, I have these understanding and spiritual wisdoms and stuff that I apply to my life and I try to live by. But it was like going into the ceremony, I realized, like, kind of just in purgatory,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I'm holding on to these ideas and living by the idea, which isn't a bad thing. The morals and beliefs to live by, but I wasn't actively learning. Just like with my personal training, I'm always actively learning. I'm studying. I reach out to other trainers. I read books and stuff to update my knowledge. But I wasn't doing that with my spirituality. I didn't have a lot of spiritual structure
Uh-huh.
in my life. So going into the ceremony, you know, like, showed that to me, and then also like the being able to work through the trauma that I did in that weekend was probably something that would have taken like 5 to 10 years of my life to do, because
Mm-hmm.
it was so intense and so vivid that um, and like the biggest thing it was like it pulled back the veil to be able to really face myself without any judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was the biggest thing for me, was just how clear everything was. Like, as you're going through it, it's like these thought, like the biggest, like the first night, my intention was going into the ceremony was to deal with the trauma from my childhood abuse, and I had in my attention, I thought for sure it was going to be focused around my abuser, which was my stepmom.
Mm-hmm.
And then going through the experience, it actually ended up being about my relationship with my father,
Mm-hmm.
and how because my dad was in my life, but like I said, he had me young. He had his own trauma. My dad was very sick for a lot of his life. He got Hodgkin's disease twice. His first time that he got it, he was 21. I think he got it again when he was 26, and then he got pancreatic cancer when he was 45 and passed away when he was 46.
Oh man.
So he had a rough life, but when you go through trauma like that, like, my dad was supposed to protect me,
Mm-hmm.
but you let this woman do it. So, like, I had a lot of resentment towards him, and I didn't, even though I loved him because he was my dad and I'll always love him, I looked at him as a weak man.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the guys that always said, oh, it's always 10 steps forward, 4 steps back. I can never catch a break, but
Okay.
he wasn't really ever putting in the work to give
Mm-hmm.
himself the breaks that he wanted. So I was very unempathetic of him.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the ceremony, I remember it was right after. I went up in front of the shaman and they did my prayer song and all this, and I went back into my chair and when the dome at the top of the tent that we were in. I remember just sitting back and I was looking up at the top and I could hear my dad's voice faintly in the back of my head, and he was telling me to come here. And when I closed my eyes, it was like he was right in front of me. And and then in that moment, I felt all the emotions and stuff that of his trauma and stuff going up of being a scared kid and dealing with two alcoholic parents to having me when he was 19 years old, having cancer and going through all this everything. And I felt the fear, the sadness and everything. And I took care of him in the later years of his life when he had pancreatic cancer. He ended up passing away at hospice at my house. And in that time, because I said our relationship was kind of it was rough, and at the time, like there was times where I was mean to him. That I lashed out at him because I didn't think he was fighting like I thought he should fight this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing everything I could in my power to try to save his life. I was making him RSO to try to treat him because
Mm-hmm.
he didn't want to do chemo again, and I couldn't blame him.
Mm-hmm.
I watched what he went through the first two times when he went through. He's brushing his teeth would just fall out in the sink. So I was like, all right, you don't want to do that. We're going to do this. And, by treating him, he didn't have any symptoms up
Mm-hmm.
until the week that, things finally went south. But anyway, getting back to, I was mean. I would lash out at him. And then I started to feel bad or feel mad at myself
Mm-hmm.
because of how I treated. I was like, I should have been more compassionate. And I just started beating on myself in my head. And then his voice came back and he says, don't do that. He's like, you were doing everything you could with what you had.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, and I got to spend the last of my life with you. And he's like, I love you. And he kind of dissipated in front of me. And then I know you probably heard me, but I sobbed like a baby for probably like an hour and a half of that of just emotion. And then it was calmness after that.
Mm-hmm.
And and it felt like even though he's still gone, felt like now I have a whole new relationship with my dad. Like I got to see a part of him that I didn't get to see because of our past
Mm-hmm.
and everything that was built up between us because of that. But finally being able to see that side of him made it so I could forgive him and then forgive myself because for the longest time after he passed, I felt like I failed. Because in my head, I thought for sure I was going to be able to heal him, because there was no symptoms. He was doing good. And then when it all went, I was like, man, I was just lying to myself the entire time. And it put me into a depression for quite a while after he passed.
Mm-hmm.
Of just like, what could I have done differently? Or, should I have not have been as hard on him and just let him eat whatever and do whatever and enjoy the final months, and all the what ifs were constantly going through my head. But yeah, it really helped me get closure with that.
That's awesome. That's a tough one too, because my relationship with my mother is complicated, and when I sat in my first ceremony, a lot of the healing that I ended up doing was around the fact that I felt like a failure because I couldn't pull her out of the cycle she was in,
Mm.
and how much of that failure resonated throughout the rest of my life. So, and I was depressed about it. I looked down on myself for not being able to do it. And because of that, it made it difficult for me to really nurture, to foster like healthy, loving, nurturing relationships. And,
Mm.
I spent a long time alone because of it. So I mean, it's a tremendously beautiful to hear, that process you went through during the ceremony, because it's tough. It's tough, but it's nice to let those tears out. So I'm glad. I'm glad you got to experience that, because it's such a powerful experience, and you don't realize Because so often you think of trauma, it's like that's what the trauma is, and then it's like, no, it's not exactly where you think it is.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, it was like that for both nights for me. Both my intentions that I went in and set, and it was totally opposite from what I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm. You feel Do you feel like you've been able to maintain that sense of spiritual growth since?
Yes. Yes. Because, like, the number one thing that I did that I felt was going to really help me apply and stay focused on the lessons that I learned in the ceremony is I went home and I wrote out my experience of
Oh,
everything
nice.
that I went through. And then I highlighted the things that I really need to stay focused on to apply to my life,
Mm-hmm.
and things that were made aware of me of my behavior and my interpersonal relationships with people that are close to me and how to be able to speak more clearly and more loving to be able to, one thing the shaman said that kind of always stuck with me is, learn to conflict better.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my household it was, especially on not so much my mom's side, my mom, I mean, I saw, screaming fits with her and the few boyfriends that she had while I was growing up. But really, on my dad's side, it was always screaming, you know, slamming doors, doing all this stuff. So, like, there was never any room for real conversation. It was just toxic screaming at each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so, like, learning to be able to be upset or be angry, but not get to that, because nothing comes of screaming at somebody or lashing out in anger. Because if I come up and I'm screaming at you about something that you did to upset me, your first knee jerk reaction is going to be defensive. You're probably going
Mm-hmm.
to tell me to go screw off.
Yeah.
But if I'm like, hey, Mike, when we were talking or when we were hanging out, you did this, and it bothered me, man. I'd appreciate if you wouldn't do that to me anymore.
Yeah.
You're gonna hear me a lot better,
Yeah.
right? And that is something that I've really worked on trying to apply to myself, and the realization of how much we project what's in our own mind. And I'm so strict on myself,
Mm-hmm.
and especially when it comes to growth and always wanting to be better every day and be striving for my career, my personal growth, and everything. And the people close to me, I'm like, you're not working hard enough.
Mm.
Like, you need to do more. You need to be like me. You need to do all this. But we're all on our own path. We're all on our
Right.
own growth. And just because I'm more focused and I'm at a big part of growth in my life doesn't mean that that's where they're at.
Right.
And I have to be able to respect their path.
You think that's helped you with your personal training as well?
Yes, with my
Yeah.
personal training, absolutely.
That's cool.
And yeah.
Yeah. That's a tough one too, because it's like you could do more. You can listen. There's more to do here. It's like to not project it onto people. His insights were strange because
Mm.
when we were pre-ceremony, we'd have these long conversations. There were nuggets of wisdom in there, but it was drawn out. So you lose some of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we're in the experience, and he calls you up, and it's like, oh, this is not a mistake. This thing he just told me is not a mistake. This is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh, it's so powerful. And to conflict better, that's an interesting thing to tell a person, because it's not to not conflict. It's not you don't want to not have conflict, but to do conflict well, you know, ties right back to fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Fight is a conflict, right? And to do it well is another thing. So that's awesome. That's a nice thing to pull, because it's just so useful, because you were training your brother and kind of trying to get him to accelerate his growth. How have you traditionally found, has your path to motivating others always been through your own sense of motivation, or have you found other ways to motivate people?
Um, I found just being genuine,
Mm-hmm.
because, like, once again, like with social media and Instagram, like, you see the highlights of people's lives, especially when it comes to athletes and Instagram influencers. can seem like they're just always doing and doing and doing and doing all this crazy stuff to, really be like, man, I keep losing my train of thought today. Um,
Well, there's a lot of that projection and motivation, right? It's like you
oh,
could do this, you could do that.
yeah, and it's like, being able to show people that it's not always about motivation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about discipline. There's a lot of days where I go to work out and I don't feel the best,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm like, man, I really just not feeling up the train, but I still make myself do it anyway because I know in the moment right now I don't want to do it, but afterwards I'm going to be grateful that I did,
Mm-hmm.
and like that's something that's gotten me through a lot of it. Mike Tyson, I love this quote about him. He says, "Discipline is doing the stuff that you hate like you love it."
Mm.
And that's something like when it comes to like I do sauna and ice baths a lot, and I can't tell you there's not a single morning that I've done an ice bath I've been excited about it.
I bet.
Especially after getting out of that warm sauna and then you're just standing over this just tub of ice and you're just like, man, I just don't want to do it. But on the other side of that struggle and that stress is relief.
Mm-hmm.
So just being able to show people that, like, even though I'm a very driven and motivated person, like, I was gonna say there, like, yeah, even though I'm a driven and motivated person, like, I still go through those days of not wanting to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's normal for anybody. But that's where like discipline comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Of being able to just be like, yeah, I'm not feeling the best, or even if like, you're not feeling the best, just still going in and doing something. Doing
Mm-hmm.
something is better than nothing because you're building that habit. You're building that consistency into you. So even if you just go into the gym and it's a 15-minute workout, you still went, so you're building that habit on yourself. And
Right.
that's where it comes in to where like you'll find that you'll be more like motivation comes from action,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not from being stagnant.
Right. That's awesome. Your clients seem to. It seems your steadiness seems to resonate with them, because I've seen you train all different kinds of people, and the way that you engage with them, it just seems to. They just seem to be so engaged. And I actually was when we were at jujitsu the other night, and I saw you training that woman, and she's hitting the mitts and stuff, and it was just cool to see. And it's always been kind of neat to see all the different people that you've been able to connect and resonate with through what you do. And then again, you know, that that misinterpretation of what people assume a fighter is, to have these deeper layers of, you know, not only motivation for yourself, but then like the discipline to continuously do it, but also be able to empathize with others. That experience you shared about your father is extremely powerful. So thank you, because
Yeah,
that's a
absolutely.
lot. And thinking about, you know, it what you said about the book you were reading seems to tie there too, right? Because how much of you could he see through all he was going through? So how much of your trauma was he missing
Mm-hmm.
because he was so stuck in his own? So I think dude, I think this is a good place to stop. There were other things I wanted to get to, but the truth is the conversation went here. Um, but I think we should do this again. It'd be
Yeah.
nice to kind of follow up on some stuff. Um, Jay, do you want to share your Instagram with everybody? I'll put the notes in the link and stuff. But I think there's a lot of dudes and a lot of just people in general that would benefit from following you.
Yeah, my handle is at Jerome the Bull, and yeah, I'm constantly like a big thing on my page that I share a lot of my stories or different philosophies and quotes that I just find inspiring for myself and things that have helped me grow. A lot of like the quotes and stuff I share, I read it myself. I'm like, man, that really helped me today.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to share it to other people. My biggest goal in my fight career and just is helping people believe in themselves, because
Mm-hmm.
for the longest time I didn't believe in myself. So I want that's why I love training people, getting to see people see what they're actually capable of, and they can come in insecure, full of doubt, and then, after a couple, months, and you start throwing some more complex stuff at them, like, there's no way I can do this. I'm like, I'm telling you, you can do this. And then they start to do it. They're like, oh my God.
That's dope. That's super dope. One last question. What do you have planned for 2023?
2023 it's gonna be a big year for me. I plan on at least fighting 4 times this coming year. I'm taking up some new positions at the gym as a coach, and I'll be getting a big influx of new clients at the beginning of the year due to some changes that are happening at the gym, and then of course all your New Year's revolutionists that want to start getting on that healthy track. Yeah, those are the people that I really like to work with. The people that need that help getting started, and yeah,
That's
that,
awesome. And if you want to get in shape, it's really good to know that the person training you is in great shape.
yeah.
Because you are like beach Jesus. But thanks for sitting down and talking with me, brother.
Yeah,
This has
thanks for
been a
having me on.
pleasure. Yeah. All right.